These are things Thatcher didn't dare to do. This government's doing them. This government has actually set out to tear up the basic legislation of the NHS from 1946 and replace it with the Health and Social Care Act, which is for a market. At the centre of the Health and Social Care Act is bringing so-called any qualified provider in to deliver services. And you search in vain for anything stipulating what the qualification is you need for a provider. You know? I mean, I'm sure Delbo and Rodney would be very keen to step in and their equivalents, you know. What qualification do you need? Three-wheeler van and a willingness to do anything, you know, can carry stuff. You know, it's not at all clear. And bear in mind, this is going to be checked by Monitor and the Care Quality Commission. Those people who missed everything about it in Staffordshire, missed everything ever since, turned out to be, Monitor turned out to be utterly useless. For example, on Peterborough Hospital, where they wrote twice to the Foundation Trust there, telling them not to sign up for a £300 million PFI scheme. Peterborough Hospital Trust ignored them, went ahead anyway. Andy Burnham ignored them, the Strategic Health Authority ignored them, the Treasury ignored them, the scheme was signed off. What's happening now? They're running a deficit of 25% of the turnover of the Trust, annual deficit of £15 million a year on a £200 million a year hospital, and all of that is the PFI cost, all of it. They couldn't afford it from day one. Monitor sat back and said, well, we tried our best, we wrote them 2 letters. That's the regulator at work, right? That's the regulator at work. A £2 billion hospital scheme signed off by a bunch of completely irresponsible directors, 2 of whom are still on the board in Peterborough. And Monitor just sits back and goes, well, what can you do? You know, people just take these bloody decisions, you know. And we're getting that now. What's the spin-off of that going to be? I'll tell you what the spin-off of that's going to be. Just as in South London Trust, we've just had this Trust Special Administrator sent in, under the unsustainable provider regime, which is a brutal dictatorial regime to override any accountability procedures, whatever, and any proper consultation, and just impose cuts above the opposition of the local population, including, incidentally, the local GPs who have opposed it in Lewisham as well, and close down the trust next door rather than end the PFI scheme in South London Healthcare Trust. And a £700 million rescue for the PFI while decimating services right across South East London. Yeah? That's what they've done there. In Peterborough, the equivalent will be Trust Special Administrator goes into Peterborough, casts around for some other hospital to close down which isn't PFI in order to keep the PFI afloat in Peterborough. What's the nearest hospital? Hinchingbrooke Hospital. Anybody heard of Hinchingbrooke Hospital in Huntingdon? 24 miles away, but I mean, what's that? Everybody apparently in Hinchingbrooke has cars, they say. So, you know, why shouldn't they just drive across to their operations and you know, it's just, that's what's going to happen. We're going to get hospitals cannibalised on the altar of PFI. That's what we're going to get. And the private finance initiative is the second prong of the attack on health services across the country. Because everything is now being sacrificed to feed the beast of the private investors who actually want their returns, guaranteed returns, 25 and 30 years on PFI. So they get a subsidy in South London, £25 million a year for 25 years, subsidy to bail out a PFI that was never affordable. Okay, so the PFI keeps rolling, everything else around it's cut back. 500 staff to lose their job in South London healthcare, millions to be cut off actual frontline budgets, Lewisham Hospital decimated, and 2/3 of the site sold off, okay, in order to keep the PFI afloat. You've got to get your priorities right. What are this government's priorities? The private sector, and the private sector. Those are their priorities in order, okay? And that's what we've got to face up to. So, fighting back. London-wide, we've just had a whole series of events. We've had, of course, a splendid example of the Lewisham Hospital protests. You know, 20,000 on the 2nd of March, 10 to 15,000 on the 1st. Tens of thousands of people turning out across the borough because they saw their hospital at threat. And what we're going to have, as Karen said, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg of the cuts so far. We've got a heck of a lot more to come. We have to create that sense of urgency. We have to create an awareness of people, the services are at risk and the cost that could be paid if we get this wrong, if we fail to build the campaign and fail to move. So we have to push every button now to mobilise. Where we've got a Labour council, we should be banging on the door of that Labour council saying, what the bloody hell are you doing to save our local hospital? There's all kinds of things you can be doing. Ealing Council has given a bit of a lead on that building, helping build and resource the local campaign. A lot better could be done in many other parts of the country where you've got Labour councils. Labour MPs, where are they? You know, they're not leading, they're being dragged into some of these campaigns, they're not leading. The Labour leadership, where are they? Ed Miliband hedges about opposing all cuts. They've got to oppose all cuts. All of these cuts are smashing our NHS. All of them are unacceptable. All of them are actually generating savings which are not going back into the NHS as was promised, but are being ploughed straight back into the Treasury to ensure taxes stay low on the rich and big business. Okay, 3 billion has just been ploughed back that was actually given to the NHS, not spent, saved through these cuts, and is now already gone back to the Treasury. No more money back to the Treasury. Let's spend the NHS budget. Let's actually get the additional money that's needed to keep these services afloat. Let's have a priority keeping people alive, keeping services alive, keeping services of quality that people can be proud of. Let's not just defend our NHS, let's improve it. Let's fight at every level to keep that going. Let's make sure that the unions, which could be doing much more, get their act into gear, okay? It's good that they're fighting back in Yorkshire. It's good that there is some resistance taking place. We have to step up that fight. We have to get the unions fighting together with the Labour Party, fighting together with anybody. Doesn't matter which party. You know, together, if you're opposed to these cuts, get it together. If you're not in a party, if you hate politics, still get in together. This is a political fight anyway, because we still have to beat these cuts that are being driven by a very conscious government, with the Lib Dems in tow. Okay? So we have to do that. We have to be fighting. I am finishing. And, you know, together, as Karen said, if we step up the movement, if we build outwards from here, you know, these are very important beginnings. If we build outwards from here, if we reach out, we link up, we can do it. We've got to keep it local in the focus and keep it strong around the issues that people respond to, but we've got to try and link up for greater strength, and we've got to build in that way a movement that can actually defend our NHS and improve it to the level we're entitled to. Thanks,